Hello, my name is Astrid Smith and I work for Stanford Libraries in the Digital Production Group. Huge thanks to Suzette and Kate for including me in these talks. I look forward to hearing the others and to speaking with all of you. My talk draws from three aspects of my own life experience: over a decade as a digitization specialist at Stanford Libraries, my lifelong personal practice as an artist and maker, and my research and studies during my recent master's thesis, which I completed in 2020. Throughout it, I'll offer pragmatic steps that you can follow when engaging with digital objects, and conversely, an invitation to think more rigorously about the assumptions that structure our thoughts about hard copy manuscripts. A digital manuscript appears on our screen fully formed in a dazzling array of pixels, like a cake coming out of the oven on a cooking show. We're not present for the steps between physical and digital, and as viewers, we may or may not mentally insert the unrecorded digitization baking time that has been concealed. This is just one example of the kind of ellipsis or gap that I want to think about together. And while we might not have ways to fill them, being cognizant of what is missing helps flesh out our understanding of the digital object. So the first digitization ellipsis is that it exists. I'm currently out on maternity leave, and one of the many things that I've taken from the birth experience is that while I used to think of myself as a kind of digital alchemist, I now see myself as more of a digital midwife, helping something new emerge rather than altering a thing that already exists. A foundational or existential gap. Something transpired to make this digital object exist. It didn't just appear out of thin air. People digitized it. In order to understand more about it, you could practice some basic investigative journalism or grade school book report technique, the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, why. Who digitized this? Who asked for it to be done and why, and so forth. For example, for the Septistellium Meditationis, you see myself along with Kristen St. John, the head of conservation, or our hands anyway, performing the handling, and I'm also operating the trigger to take photos while lab assistant Michaela Go is performing quality assurance steps. Traces of the digitizers can be seen in the images as we infuse our perceptions and priorities. You can put yourself in the shoes of the digitizer. What visual clues can you observe about the choices they have made? In the case of this manuscript, you see that we chose to use clear holding aids that I made, where to place them, and chose to allow for some shadows that show the stiffness of the vellum. Curators and selectors also influence the outcomes, having conversations with staff about the end result that best serves the content. The next ellipsis is that a particular manuscript was chosen. The selection process is not typically impartial. There are biases and personal interests at play. Why was this particular item digitized out of so many others that could have been? Was it for a patron, a project, personal choice of a subject specialist, or a programmatic effort to digitize an entire collection? Maybe it was for an exhibit. For every object, ask yourself what was the driving force behind its digitization, and does it relate to any other digitized objects? If so, do they further your research? Huge amounts of resources are required to digitize materials, and they exist for a reason. So think about or investigate the reasons and see what you can discover. The next ellipsis that I want to mention is that the digitized object is not like looking through a window to the physical one, as much as it might seem so. It comes with its own considerations and attributes. The fact that a digital manuscript is mediated by infrastructure can go unacknowledged. It can be easy to imply that you're working with a physical object, but image viewers have a wide variety of functionalities and goals. When consulting a physical manuscript, you grasp it directly in your hands and make your own observations. Whereas in a viewer, it's being presented to you through still images that are organized according to the codes that infrastructure teams write to suit what they understand to be the user's needs. But they're making decisions too, and these, along with the decisions of the digitizer, affect your perceptions of the object. Be specific about the fact that you're consulting a digital manuscript. Describe the image viewing interface and the date you accessed it, and these things are constantly changing. If you come across an object in different sites, look at the differences and see if there's anything important worth calling out. Take a screenshot if it's helpful to your work. You might also consider bringing the object into a universal viewer like Mirador to get a uniform impression of all the objects you're investigating. There can be an ellipsis formed by the way we talk about digital manuscripts, where the physical one gets nudged aside. It is not a replacement. Practice care with language. Terms like surrogate may imply a change in the balance of value. The digital object is both a complement and a corollary to the archival object being referenced for its creation. Welsh medievalist Elaine Treharne encapsulates this duality of distinctness and correlation by using the term digital aspect to describe digital objects, which thoughtfully acknowledges their own unique phenomenological qualities. In her new book, Perceptions of Medieval Manuscripts, The Phenomenal Book. In my master's thesis, which I am currently negotiating for potential publication, I propose using the term transmediation to describe objects from Genesis through their various formats. I won't go into too much detail here, but the term is borrowed from semiotics, the study of translating signs and recognizable symbols. Transmediation is the process of translating meaning across sign systems. It's most commonly used in the context of things like comics and movies borrowing characters from one another. But here, an idea is formed, at which point a proto-object exists in someone's mind's eye. They feverishly scribble the manuscript. Loose leaves might be given to a printer and bound, and later perhaps digitally imaged by someone who I won't name, and accessioned into a repository where it's made available online. The process of taking that physical book and creating a digital object from it is an example of remediation. And the individual instances of formats, such as the manuscript pages, printed volume, and digital object, are examples of instantiation. So what I propose is that the transmediation path helps us chart and understand the relationship between the various forms of an object, and that the digitized object is an accretion of stories and events. Specify digital objects in your citations, footnotes, or text, and make it clear how it relates to the other forms in its trajectory. I also want to emphasize the concept of phenomenology in the digital realm. Phenomenology is the study of the essence of consciousness as experienced from the first-person point of view. And I think with digital manuscripts, it can be easy to think that phenomenological qualities are lost or difficult to observe or may not have visually translated, despite digitizers' best efforts, from the physical counterpart. But I would suggest you describe textually what did not come across. There's a lot of visual information conveyed, and both the physical object and the digital object can elicit a sensory response. Paint a vivid picture. The process will enhance your observations and your readers' experiences as well. The digital object is not definitive. It's capable of changing, just as a physical object is very slowly changing from handling or deterioration as well. Neither is static. Consulting a digital object may be iterative, and each visit might be different or might elicit a different response. As they say, you can't step in the same river twice. Like a time capsule, the digital object captures the physical object at a specific point in time. And if it's digitized later on, both the object and the imaging technology or display infrastructure may have changed. To reiterate some of the pragmatic steps I've suggested, use the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, why. Describe the image viewer. List its attributes and the date you access the digital object. Relatedly, specify digital objects in your citations or footnotes to explicitly indicate you consulted the digital format. Paint a vivid picture through your words. Textually describe what you're seeing and how your senses responded. Lastly, make a game of trying to find these and other ellipses. The process may prove thought-provoking and help you understand your objects more deeply. As an added bonus, seen here are a couple images of some handouts that I've created for students when asked to visit classes as a guest speaker. You might also like to engage with digitization departments or specialists, ask them to speak to your classes, invite them for coffee, and see how viewing things from their perspectives helps reshape your own and proves mutually beneficial. Thank you all so much for your time. I've really enjoyed sharing with you. Please see the suggested further reading below if you'd like to check it out, and feel free to follow or reach out to me if you have questions or thoughts. Thank you very much.